Hi, and welcome to this little chat about sobriety unveiled. And quite a few people have asked me since I did a couple of talks, messages, tributes, whatever, in the last few weeks about what I've learned from being sober. And I put a post on social media to say that I was 2,222 days sober. So that's 6 and a bit years. And somebody said to me, so what have you gained? What have been the main things that you have got from sobriety? So I put together a little blog post. It's something I shared on the Alcohol Free Life podcast a while ago, of some insights that had kind of come to me, things that I've been kind of thinking about over this period of time, and just might be useful to you. So I'm going to share some of those with you now. I mean, I am proud of some of the achievements that have happened for me since ditching the booze. And I honestly don't think that anything even similar could have happened when I was still drinking, because there was a tremendous amount of can't be asked going on when I was drinking. But I have done over 250 episodes of the Alcohol Free Life podcast. So thank you if you are a listener to that. I've had incredible guests. I'm so lucky. I've given 2 TEDx talks, Sobriety Rocks, Who Knew? And the second TED talk, which was called Could Curiosity Be Your Superpower? I run the community, the Sober Club, which is completely non-judgmental platform for those who are sober curious or have been sober for ages, because we focus on the well-being, the whole well-being picture, and the what's next. I host retreats. I've trained as a sobriety well-being coach. I'm also trained in EFT, NLP, and something called matrix reimprinting, which is just fantastic but difficult to explain. I'm also trained in family constellations. I love offering those workshops, and I train others to become holistic sober coaches. So it's a lot, isn't it? It's a lot. And I'm really proud of that stuff. I wouldn't have done any of it if I had still been drinking. But, the joy of sobriety has become such a thing for me. I can't not share it. So doing all this work doesn't really feel like work. It's great. But the reality is, none of this was plain sailing at the beginning. So, if you're thinking, well, that's okay for you, but I feel really caught in the alcohol trap, then trust me, I really understand. So I thought I'd share some of these insights, 21 insights I've written down, and lessons in a way that have come across since I started this journey of sobriety. It really has been quite the roller coaster, and there's twists and there's turns and there's stuff on the way. But here's some of the gems I've uncovered. So, insight number one: the early days can be really tough. Well, you don't say. If you're not clinically dependent, if you are, then that's not within my remit to support you or even try and inspire you. Obviously, you need to get medical intervention. But if you're not clinically dependent, if you're someone like me who was someone drinking more than they wanted to, but otherwise functioning, then physically the discomfort can ease fairly quickly. You might feel a bit headachy for a few days. You might not sleep well. That was a real shock to me. I thought I was going to sleep fantastically well. But above all, it's the mental anguish. It's the chatter in the brain. It's that voice that tells you, oh, this is just too hard. I can't do it. What will everyone think? I'm not going to manage it. I'm not even going to make 30 days. It's the voice in the head. And that's because it's been that neural pathway that has been furrowed for literally years. And, in my case, boy, was it stubborn. So I learned that it was really important to try and quiet that voice, try and talk back to that inner critic and just say, look, I'm just curious as to how it might feel when I'm free from this trap. I'm just curious. And I now highly recommend curiosity. I really do. I also felt really fragile in the early days and weeks. Actually, I felt really disconnected. It felt just really odd. I was kind of observing myself. I now realize that's quite a good thing, but I was kind of looking at myself. Who is this person? She's not behaving in the way that she normally would. And I was an absolute emotional wreck. I mean, I've always been kind of quite emotional, but wow, I was an emotional wreck, crying at absolutely everything. I still do, in fairness, but now it's more likely to be tears of joy or gratitude that I get to walk by the sea, or whatever is feeling good at the time. Insight number two is a really important one. It's that the brain chemistry is out of whack, usually for a good couple of months after stopping drinking. And the basics are what you need to really support that brain chemistry. I forgot everything I knew when I quit booze. I'd been queen of holistic living. I'd always taken supplements. I'd always eaten well, but it kind of went to pot. I just felt a bit sorry for myself. I forgot my own stuff. And then finally, by about week 3, a little bit too late, really, I rang a nutritionist healer friend who said, get a grip. You need really good food. You need protein with every meal. You need great supplements to support this. And I've since done a huge amount of training in this area, and I now really understand that the nutritional piece is key. So with my one-to-one clients, we go over the diet, we go over the supplements, we go over the basics, and the basics for everyone are eat well, eat properly, no fad diets. I mean, it's only for a few weeks. If you want to go back to something else, then that's fine. But for a few weeks, eat really well, no fasting, protein with every meal. I mean, if it has to be a few nuts, that's better than nothing. Absolutely no artificial sweeteners, nothing low fat, nothing low sugar, and really good supplements. They are key in these early weeks. They really are. And I highly recommend the supplements by Clive, who's the links, I'll put them below. The magnesium blend is an absolute game changer. It really, really is, for sleep, for anxiety, for headaches. Most of us need vitamin D3, particularly in the winter. We need vitamin C if you're menopausal. I highly recommend iodine. Message me for more information on that one. There's a bunch of things that make a massive difference. So I'll put a couple of links below, and just feel free to message me. If you get your vitamins and minerals from the link below, a little bit gets contributed into our Sober Club Give Back Fund. So, it's a win-win. So thank you if you're willing to do that, to use that link. But don't skip this step. However you decide to do it, don't skip it. The nutrition is literally key. And the earlier you get onto that path, the better. Insight number 3 was a shocker for me, and that is that shame can really rear its ugly head. In addition to feeling emotional, you have to feel all the feels, don't you, when you stop drinking? And somehow it felt easier when you could just numb it all out. But really, it was very interesting for me that shame reared its ugly, low vibrational head. I just felt such shame and embarrassment for what I'd been doing for years, just ashamed that I'd been talking about holistic living, and yet I'd been drinking pretty much every day. I just felt such shame, and acknowledging my own, I don't know, I suppose at the time, just felt like complete lack of ability to move on. It just felt really difficult. It felt like a huge responsibility, and I also felt as though I wanted to shield others from that pain. But of course, the antidote to shame is vulnerability and honesty, even when the conversations are really tough. So the shame was a big one. I also found all the terms around ditching the booze really awkward as well. I never had labeled myself as an alcoholic. I never would label myself as an alcoholic. I use the term alcohol free. Back then, the word sobriety felt kind of awkward as well, but it's much more acceptable now. And authors like Catherine Gray really helped. She said, the word sober, it just needs a rebrand. Her book is called Sunshine Warm Sober, and that's much better than, stone cold sober, which really doesn't sum it up at all. It couldn't be further from the truth. Insight 4, at some point, forgiveness will need to come in. So I've already mentioned the shame, and when we start looking back at what's happened in the past, it really can blindside us. It can literally just, the weight of that shame and the guilt can just really kind of hit you early on. But it's really important to share that the early months are not the time to deal with these thoughts, this guilt, this hatred, if you like, might come upon you But actually, what we need to do at the beginning of the journey is forgive ourselves. We can't change what has happened in the past, unfortunately. We can't change what we did, but we can change what we do now and moving forward. And we can look forward, we can leave the baggage behind. But being able to forgive ourselves is really key. And we also need to forgive ourselves for becoming addicted in the first place. You know, we all have this idea of, oh my God, I'm so weak, I'm so pathetic. Why did I allow that to happen? Where's my willpower? But it's the alcohol that's addictive. It's not our lack of willpower or our addictive personality. It's the alcohol. It's the societal norm, the fact that alcohol is absolutely everywhere, from celebrations to commiserations and everything in between. It's our culture and our society that would have us drink, and a lot, and go to great pains to ensure that we continue to drink. I mean, doctors, you know, the most they'll do is kind of often say, oh, have an alcohol-free day, you know, yeah. And how much better if they realize that life is better without any. So anyways, in terms of the forgiveness piece, I've shared several times on the podcast and in various work that I've done, the ACE study. It stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And, you know, they do say if you score 3 or more on that study, and that's not hard to do, then you are more likely to have an addiction in later life. So, you know, even if that's the case, it certainly was with me, the answer to that isn't, you know, oh, it's my parents' fault. You know, it's a case of, okay, so it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. And once we can see it, we can deal with it, we can take back the control. None of us are perfect. My book is called Imperfectly Natural, one of my books. Glad I landed on that title, because, you know, we all do need to embrace our imperfections. But in something if stuff is coming up for you around forgiveness, around shame, then absolutely check out the Family Constellations workshops that I run, because they can be unbelievably powerful. And, you know, you can be the one who can break the cycle. You don't have to carry this on and pass it on through the generations. You can literally be the one to break the cycle. Insight 5 is, when you focus only on what you're gaining, you become more resilient. So I never let anyone use the phrase giving up. There's literally nothing to give up. What we can do is focus on what we're going to be gaining. So as soon as I was able to catch sight of that potentially better life without the booze, that's when I found enough of that flame to keep me going. And, you know, it's a flame that can extinguish the doubt and the fears. And over time, quite slowly, it starts to feel like it could be possible for me. Before I quit, I could have only imagined at best that I would manage to, you know, cope without alcohol. I'd have that bleak existence. Because I was focusing on the lack, purely focusing on the lack. But if you think, you know, missing out, if you think about missing out, that's just insanity, because alcohol is toxic. There is nothing to give up. Feeling happy and well, you know, felt like a distant destination for me, but every step gets you a bit closer to it. So, to put it poetically, the beauty of reaching that peak lies not just in the view, but in realizing how truly deserving you are. It took me a hell of a long time to believe that, but I did start to feel that tiny little glimmer of excitement, and I started to feel that I could overcome this, I could get free. And when you ditch the booze, you get more clarity and you get more resilience. And now at 6.3 years on, I am free. I'm not recovering. I'm recovered. That's going to start a whole bunch of arguments if you are from a 12-step background, but it is absolutely my truth. Insight number 6 is addiction's invisible face. So when I was drinking, I became really good at playing a role. You know, I really seemed completely fine. Not all battles are on the surface. And, you know, addiction doesn't always show up as someone disheveled or having a run-in with the law. My struggle was very much internal. Nobody else knew I had an issue. I rocked up to work. I didn't drive if I'd been drinking, obviously. I was seemingly completely fine. But, you know, none of us know what it's like, do we, to walk a mile in someone else's shoes. I really had to acknowledge it myself first. So, to that end, sharing what's going on with someone else is crucial. I told Claire Pooley, whose book, The Sober Diaries, kickstarted it all for me, and it was brilliant to have her support. But I didn't really share it with my family in the first few weeks. I mean, they must have wondered about the Quitlet book orders flying through the door. Um, but I'm glad I didn't, because although those close to you can be well-meaning, it's not their experience. They're not having the same experience as you, so they just don't understand how raw and emotional you might feel. And with the best will in the world, your loving, supportive partner might just say, "Oh dear, you're having a terrible day," or, "Well, you've done 3 weeks. I mean, now you can just have one. It's fine." And they don't mean any harm, but you need to be connected with people who have been there, done it, and got the t-shirt. So do share how you're feeling, but share it with someone who gets it. So join us in the Sober Club, and you get an online course, Get the Buzz Without the Booze. You get a whole library of non-judgmental content. You get inspirational stuff, regular Zoom meetups, a truly supportive community. Insight 7 is empowerment through knowledge. And talking of Quitlet books, I do think that immersing yourself in knowledge and inspiration can be a game changer. So I delved into the science and the logic. I really needed to learn about alcohol. I'd had so many years when I thought that I was the problem, but I hadn't realized that alcohol is a toxic, addictive substance and it has zero benefits. But the more I learned, the more I realized, change is necessary, and knowledge can be the catalyst for transformation. However, I do think it's critical to have motivation too. There's that lovely saying, that emotions, not logic, will inspire action. We do need the logic, but it's that emotive piece, that motivation, that's going to make the difference. So in addition to the books about the logic about alcohol, I did read memoirs. I did read books about how wonderful sobriety is. And I think that's what made the biggest difference for me, catching sight of a happier life. And I listened to podcasts as well. And that's ultimately why I started my podcast, because listening to podcasts really kept me inspired. Insight number 8, there are many shades of grey and none of them sexy. So there are many paths between the, beyond the traditional AA approach. 6 years ago, 6.5 years ago, when I was drinking, I had no idea there was anyone else like me, because, we're led to believe there's 2 types of drinkers. There's those at rock bottom, there's everybody else. We know of 12-step programs. We know of rehabilitation. That didn't sit right with me. And then we just think about, okay, so that's not right, but also everyone else seems to be really happy. They seem to be cool with their drinking. It's totally not true. It's a spectrum. There are many, many shades of grey, at least 15, none of them sexy. Jolene Park is the one who coined that phrase, grey area drinkers, in her TEDx talk. And it's really powerful because we can see it's a spectrum. And we can see that some people are a long way down the booze elevator and others are farther up. But you know what? You don't have to wait till you hit the bottom to get off. You can, hop off now. You can choose to quit. That's the really cool thing. Insight number 9, trusting intuition and recognizing that our thoughts create our reality. I had to become much better at trusting my own intuition. For so many years, I'd listened to the voice in the head, the voice that said, "Oh, go on, be rude not to have another one, and you deserve it." I hadn't given enough attention to that still small voice that popped in at 3 a.m. and said, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Just, this is not okay. It's not authentic with who you are. Take care of yourself, please." And when we stop drinking, we are able to get more in tune with our intuition, and then we can listen to it. It can start to guide us towards that transformation and kind of point us towards that new direction. So I had to start noticing my thoughts and becoming aware of them, even the ones that were not so nice, even the ones not so good. I've since done a lot of work in my training around thoughts, around how our thoughts create our reality and shape our future. we do need to become thought detectives and literally challenge the thoughts that come in and ask, is that true? So I do now choose my thoughts more wisely. It doesn't mean that the ones I don't want don't pop in. They do, of course they do. Negative thoughts come in and the inner critic voice comes in. But now I'm able to put the pause in, notice those thoughts, and try to reframe them. So I borrowed a mantra from one of my dear friends and author of Live Life, Love Life, and a Wonderful World for All. So Sue Stone, who is one of my podcast guests, she has this wonderful phrase, and she says, repeat regularly, I love life and life loves me. And then that's how we can manifest the future that we want. And insight number 10 is we need patience in change. Things don't change especially quickly, and that can make you feel very frustrated. I had literally expected to drop 2 stone in weight, be sleeping great, look amazing, feel less anxious, just feel fantastic 2 weeks after ditching the booze. But sadly, after years of drinking, it really isn't that simple. Changes take some time to fully embrace. Awareness does build up, and eventually, there is that transformation that happens. But it's a gradual process, stepping into a new identity, accepting yourself as a non-drinker. Often things need to shift physically and emotionally, and we need patience, we need baby steps. But we do get stronger. One fantastic way to help this along is to document little things that are changing. And I now say to clients, okay, so write down 5 blessings at the end of every day. Not, the obvious, or grateful for my home and all of that. I mean, of course you are, but the little bright spots, the glimmers, as they're sometimes called, write those down. I used to be that horrible kind of impatient person who was grouchy if a nice tea shop didn't have any wine. I now savor the beauty and stuff. I now can savor the beauty of a vintage teacup and practice some gratitude and some patience. And on that note, you're going to have to be patient for the next 11 tips. I will see you next time. Check out the Sober Club.